Good morning. I am up and about. It's my day off. So, my normal people who would sit here with me and visit are probably still sleeping. But I wanted to read because I knew my day was going to be full and I want to get the book done. We're on chapter 32 and I'm enjoying it. We've got all these guys interested in Elizabeth now. And um, I want to see what's going to happen. So I've got a doctor's appointment today. I've got my granddaughter's play date with one of our good friends. So it's a beautiful day. I knew it was going to get hectic and busy. So I thought, why not go ahead and do this while I have time? So let's read. This is page 167 in my edition, and it's chapter 32. Elizabeth. So there are people out there. Good morning or good evening, wherever you live. So Elizabeth was sitting by herself the next morning and writing to Jane. Lorena Rivera. Hello. Thank you. Which videos are you watching? Are you on this book or are you using another of my books? You're a new person from Puerto Rico. Hello. Somewhere I long to go. I have a dear friend who's Puerto Rican. We taught together years ago. We don't live in the same city anymore, but she used to show me her pictures when she would go home, and it looks so amazing and so beautiful. And I keep thinking I'm going to go, and then unfortunately, between hurricanes and um, Corona and just different things, because I thought I would do a cruise, and those haven't been very good lately. Anyway, Lorena, that's enough about that. But Puerto Rico is a beautiful, beautiful place, somewhere I would love to visit. She was writing to Jane, her sister, remember, while Mrs. Collins and Maria were gone on business into the village, when she was startled by a ring at the door, the certain signal of a visitor. As she had heard no carriage, she thought it not unlikely to be Lady Catherine, and under that apprehension was putting away her half-finished letter that she might escape all impertinent questions when the door opened, and to her very great surprise, Mr. Darcy and Mr. Darcy only entered the room. So we know he's kind of got a crush on her, but is he just playing with her? Is he serious about her? What's going to happen there? He seemed astonished, too, on finding her alone, and apologized for his intrusion by letting her know that he had understood all the ladies to be within. They then sat down, and when her inquiries after Rosings were made, seemed in danger of sinking into total silence. It was absolutely necessary, therefore, to think of something, and in this emergence, recollecting when she had seen him last in Hertfordshire, and feeling curious to know what he would say on the subject of their hasty departure, she observed, "Now, how very suddenly you all quitted Netherfield last November, Mr. Darcy. It must have been a most agreeable surprise to Mr. Bingley to see you all after him so soon, for, if I recollect right, he went but the day before. He and his sisters were well, I hope, when you left London?" "Perfectly so, I thank you." She found that she was to receive no other answer, and after a short pause added, "I think I've understood Mr. Bingley has not much idea of ever returning to Netherfield again. I have never heard him say so, but it is probable that he may spend very little of his time there in future. He has many friends, and he is at a time of life when friends and engagements are continually increasing. If he means to be but little at Netherfield, it would be better for the neighborhood that he should give up the place entirely, for then we might possibly get a settled family there. But perhaps Mr. Bingley did not take the house so much for the convenience of the neighborhood as for his own, and we must expect him to keep or quit it on the same principle. I should not be surprised," said Darcy, "if he were to give it up as soon as any eligible purchase offers." So he's supporting her belief that Bingley really has abandoned Jane. Elizabeth made no answer. She was afraid of talking longer of his friend, and having nothing else to say, was now determined to leave the trouble of finding a subject to him. He took the hint, and soon began with, "This seems a very comfortable house. Lady Catherine, I believe, did a great deal to it when Mr. Collins first came to Hunsford." "I believe she did, and I'm sure she could not have bestowed her kindness on a more grateful object. Mr. Collins appears very fortunate in his choice of a wife. Yes, indeed, his friends may well rejoice in his having met with one of the very few sensible women who would have accepted him or have made him happy if they had. My friend has an excellent understanding, though I'm not certain that I could consider her marrying Mr. Collins as the wisest thing she ever did. Hello, Franklin Felipe Fernandez. Haven't seen you in a week or so. The day is starting out beautifully. Thank you. Thanks for checking in. Dominican Republic. Have you read In the Time of the Butterflies with me? Because that's set in Dominican. And you'll hear me say often that I don't know the history. So I hope you did read it. Did you know that story? I mean, are they as heroic and famous in Dominican as the book made them sound like? The sisters. I'm curious to hear about it. No, they're not that famous. So that's what I was wondering. The author had heard about them. She was Dominican, and she'd heard about them growing up and was very interested in making up the story that explained everything. So she admits that it's not really biographical. It's more fiction based on some historical data. And Aaron, A Wallflower Christmas. Okay. Is it a short story or a book? I don't know this one. Are you recommending it or asking me to read it? Because looking at this, I have at least another month on Pride and Prejudice, and I've committed to Animal Farm after that. So if you're needing it now, I probably won't get to it. But I will look into it. I know Yellow Wallpaper is what that makes me think of. That's a short story. And most of y'all have probably read it in high school. But I don't know A Wallflower Christmas. It looks like maybe a series. So now I'm curious. All right, I'll keep reading. She seems perfectly happy, however, and in a prudential light, it is certainly a very good match for her. It must be very agreeable to her to be settled within so easy a distance of her own family and friends. An easy distance, do you call it? It is nearly 50 miles. And what is 50 miles of good road? Little more than half a day's journey. Yes, I call it a very easy distance. I should never have considered the distance as one of the advantages of the match, cried Elizabeth. I should never have said Mrs. Collins was settled near her family. It is proof of your own attachment to Hertfordshire. Anything beyond the very neighborhood of Longbourn, I suppose, would appear far. As he spoke, there was a sort of smile, which Elizabeth fancied she understood. He must be supposing her to be thinking of Jane in Netherfield, and she blushed as she answered, I do not mean to say that a woman may not be settled too near her family. The far and the near must be relative, and depend on many varying circumstances. Where there is fortune to make the expenses of traveling unimportant, distance becomes no evil. But that is not the case here. Mr. and Mrs. Collins have a comfortable income, but not such a one as will allow of frequent journeys. And I'm persuaded my friend would not call herself near her family under less than half the present distance. Mr. Darcy drew his chair a little towards her and said, You cannot have a right to such a very strong local attachment. You cannot have always been at Longbourn. Elizabeth looked surprised. The gentleman experienced some change of feeling. He drew back his chair, took a newspaper from the table, and glancing over it, said in a colder voice, Are you pleased with Kent? A short dialogue on the subject of the country ensued, on either side calm and concise, and soon put an end to the entrance of Charlotte and her sister, just returned from their walk. The tete-a-tete, the head-to-head, that the two of them together, surprised them. Mr. Darcy related the mistake which had occasioned his intruding on Miss Bennet, and after sitting a few minutes longer without saying much to anybody, went away. What can be the meaning of this? Said Charlotte, as soon as he was gone. My dear Eliza, he must be in love with you, or he would never have called on us in this familiar way. But when Elizabeth told of his silence, it did not seem very likely, even to Charlotte's wishes, to be the case, and after various conjectures, they could at last only suppose his visit to proceed from the difficulty of finding anything to do, which was the more probable from the time of year. All field sports were over. Within doors there was Miss Catherine, books, and a billiard table. But gentlemen cannot be always within doors, and in the nearness of the parsonage, or the pleasantness of the walk to it, or of the people who lived in it, the two cousins found a temptation from this period of walking thither almost every day. By the way, on my communities page of the YouTube homepage, the question today is, what is my favorite British lit word? It's supposed to say thus, but it auto-corrected it to this. Wench, thither, heretofore, and I don't remember the other one. So I ask you to guess what is my favorite. Right now, wench is leading, like a saucy wench. I do like the word wench. I think fortnight. I don't know if I put fortnight, but my favorite word to say and to read is thither. I just think it's such a fun word. Thither. Shall we go thither, hither, thither, and yon? So you can go and plug in because now you know the answer. Thither has been in this book at least 5 times so far. They called at various times of the morning, sometimes separately, sometimes together, and now and then accompanied by their aunt. It was plain to them all that Colonel Fitzwilliam came because he had pleasure in their society, a persuasion which of course recommended him still more, and Elizabeth was reminded by her own satisfaction in being with him, as well as by his evident admiration of her former favorite George Wickham, and though in comparing them, she saw there was less captivating softness in Colonel Fitzwilliam's manners. She believed he might have the best informed mind. But why Mr. Darcy came so often to the parsonage, it was more difficult to understand. It could not be for society, as he frequently sat there 10 minutes together without opening his lips, and when he did speak, it seemed the effect of necessity rather than of choice, a sacrifice to propriety, not a pleasure to himself. He seldom appeared really animated. Mr. Collins knew not what to make of him. Colonel Fitzwilliam's occasionally laughing at his stupidity proved that he was generally different, which her own knowledge of him could not have told her, and as she would have liked to believe this change the effect of love, and the object of that love, her friend Eliza, she set herself seriously to work to finding it out. She watched him whenever they were at Rosings, and whenever he came to Hunsford, but without much success. So he would be good at poker. He keeps his feelings in check. He certainly looked at her friend a great deal, but the expression of that look was disputable. It was an earnest is serious, steadfast, like he's looking at her gaze, but she often doubted whether there was much admiration in it, and sometimes it seemed nothing but absence of mind. She had once or twice suggested to Elizabeth the possibility of his being partial to her, but Elizabeth always laughed at the idea, and Mrs. Collins did not think it right to press the subject, from the danger of raising expectations which might only end in disappointment. For in her opinion, it admitted not of a doubt that all of her friend's dislike would vanish if she could suppose him to be in her power. In her kind schemes for Elizabeth, she sometimes planned her marrying Colonel Fitzwilliam. He was beyond comparison the pleasantest man. He certainly admired her, and his situation in life was most eligible. But to counterbalance these advantages, Mr. Darcy had considerable patronage in the church, and his cousin could have none at all. So they're all trying to figure out what's the deal with Mr. Darcy. What do you guys think? Hello, always. What do you think? Do you think Darcy likes her? Do you think he's judging her? Do you think he's studying her for Bingley? What do you think's happening in that relationship? It's certainly interesting. And where do you think it's going to go? I always think it's good to predict because that helps you engage in the story. All right, it was just a quick read. We're not even 15 minutes, but I've got stuff to do. So I'm off to do it. I may get on later. Who knows? I do want to get the book read because I keep getting requests and I just can't keep up with you guys. You're such great readers. I'm so glad for that. If you haven't subscribed already, Thousand Splendid Suns series, such a good one. Such a good one. I'm glad. I hope you enjoy it. If you haven't subscribed already, do it. Ring the bell if you like. Tell your friends, tell your teachers. Reach out to me on Instagram if you need help with homework assignments. Let's keep growing. Come over to, if Siddharth were here, he would have plugged it already. Come over to, I can't remember, Discord and chat with us. I'm active on there. Lets you know my boring life, what I'm doing. Like today, I'm going to go be Grandma Omi to my sweet little granddaughter because her birthday's next week. So we're going to go have a play date with some friends. Um, keep reading, and I will read to you next time. See ya.